It's going to be brought to us by Pastor Raymond Curtis.
Good afternoon. I always get real, I won't say nervous, I'll just say that it just kind of becomes a concern when you start off going to write one thing and all of a sudden something jumps into your head and you realize that there was a reason for that. You get so comfortable with the other thing and then you get up here and you're not comfortable because now you realize, wait a minute, I know this stuff, but this isn't stuff that I'm familiar with and I'm not so sure how to deal with this. But you learn to put your hands in the hands of the one that gave it to you and say, I've got to do what I've got to do. But the other one was so much, but I'll let that alone. Because I've already seen through the Bible study and some of the conversation that this was better done than what I had planned. So I've learned to back away and just follow the plan instead of trying to set up your own. You learn to do that. Now, it's often said that the importance of concept is shown biblically in how many times that concept is brought forward in the Bible. For instance, the word love. The word love and the word and that concept as a whole, love, is found 311 times across 287 scriptures in the Bible. It's quite a few. So obviously you must assume that God wants us to love, that he gives us that much instruction. The only other thing that's anywhere close to that in terms of how many times you'll see it in the Bible is the word sacrifice. Sacrifice is found 218 times across 205 scriptures, across the entire Bible. Where was it? Was it in the old or get away from that, please. Get away from that idea that it's split between the old and the new, that these rules don't apply anymore and all. No. The way the rules are laid out and the way that they're set up is that it goes across the entire 66 books. If there's anything that you don't do anymore, most of everything that you don't do anymore is because of Christ's sacrifice in terms of other sacrifices. Anything sacrificial you don't do anymore in Christ. That's kind of simplistic way to put it, but if you follow that, chances are you won't go wrong. Yet, these two concepts, love, sacrifice, and this was interesting to me, they're only found together once. Only once. And that reference was to Yeshua and his love for us. Let's go to Ephesians to drop anchor. Ephesians, the 5th chapter, the 1st verse. Ephesians, the 5th chapter, the 1st verse, where it says, therefore, be followers of God as dear children and walk in love. As Christ also has loved us and has given himself for us as an offering and a sacrifice to God for a smelling savor. Could it be that because this amazing combination is only found once and it references Christ, the world doesn't believe that it's important? Just wondering. Depending on your version, it tells us to be followers or imitators of God. For those who wonder, that word, when it says God, is the Greek word theos, which obviously in this case references Yeshua and tells us to follow or imitate him. This will become more important later in the sermon, as well as in the days to come and the time to come. You see, in the Bible, there are a couple of other words that are important in our walk as believers. They don't show up nearly as much, but they're equally important in our walk. But we don't want to, for some reason, follow this one either. Just seems like the ones, no matter, doesn't really seem to matter how important they are. Once man decides he's going to go his own way, they tend to want to do that. But this one only comes up 12 times. Obedience comes up 12 times across 12 scriptures. Don't miss this. This I found fascinating, noting that in the Bible, the number 12 is the number that symbolizes God's power and authority, as well as serving as a perfect governmental foundation. Some people doubt that also, but we'll get into that later. It all started in terms of governmental foundation from Jacob's 12 sons. From Jacob's 12 sons came the 12 tribes of Israel. They were taught and led by prophets. Those prophets were led by something that they brought with them, that on which was a breastplate. That breastplate of the prophets had something called the Urim and Thummim. From this, when they had questions, they would ask, and answers would come from this Urim and Thummim. The Urim and Thummim had 12 stones on the front of it. You start to see a pattern here. Yeshua, when he walked in Galilee, he called 12 disciples. And in the millennium, there will be 12 times 12,000 converted physical Hebrews, comprising, for you math majors, 12 times 12,000 is 144,000. In case you wonder where that number came from. And there will be 144,000 converts to Yeshua from Israel. Also, there will be 12 times 12,000 converts who will be saved from the unconverted Gentile populations. Together, we all will go through in that end temple 12 pearl-carved gates of the temple, the wall of which will be 144 feet high. 12 feet times 12. And we will worship God how many months in a year, folks? 12 months of the year. Forever. And 12 times forever really won't matter, because once you get to that point, forever is forever. So I guess you could say 12 times 12, forever. And you can move on in this. This is fascinating stuff that we maybe can't wrap our minds around now, but be ready for it. Once we get to this point, the time won't even matter anymore. But you see, knowing that this is promised of all God's people, I wonder why this obedience to God and this love and self-sacrifice seems to be as difficult as it is. Why is life so hard? Why do we have such trouble and such heartache? The answer is obvious. Sin. Sin is the obvious answer. Even the prophecies foretold the state of affairs at the end of the age. So many call it the end of the world, but God has ordained the world to be here for a whole lot longer than now. So don't worry about it being the end of the world. It's not going to just one day you wake up and it's all gone. No. What that word is age. It's the end of an age. The word is the Greek G165 for those who study, or eon. Speaking of the end of these times before the triumphant return of Yeshua, our Messiah. Once Yeshua returns to rule, reign, and dismantle this corrupt, unfair, evil, satanic government ruling this world, he will usher in a new age or a new time or a new eon of love, a time of life endlessly for those who make it through, compassion, endless productivity. You think you see technology now? Technology has brought us over the last 110 years or so further than it has over the last 6,000. And it's going to be so interesting to see what comes later. I think about people from, say, the first century that would look at things right now and think, it's magic, it's unbelievable. It's not. We've seen nothing yet. We've seen nothing yet. However, in order to get all this, what also must be ushered in are obedience. And from this will become plenty of happiness. Believe it. But the great thing is this age of evil will be over. And what a day that'll be. But most of the world doubts this. As a result, so many in this world seem stuck on one other word that I found in the Bible 87 times. A little drink that we've gotten addicted to. Can't get it at Benny's. Can't get it at Foremost. But somehow we've all been imbibing it for a while. It's a little drink called Haterade. Little drink called Haterade. The word hate is found 87 times across 85 scriptures. Now, I know this allegedly is a democracy. Some would argue that. I certainly do. But wouldn't we all agree that 311 is more than 87? Don't we recognize that 218 is more than 87? Yet, in a Satan-controlled world, it would seem that it's 187 on all of us. Anybody that lives in L.A. knows what I'm talking about. I think that's 311 here in Chicago, but that's a whole other thing there we don't even want to talk about. 187 in Chicago is what when they would call across the radio to the police and tell them that there's been a murder committed. It seems that hate is the ruling emotion on this planet, which further proves who is temporarily in charge. And with Satan in charge and most people unwittingly going along, there must be a way to tune out his influence and lock in on the word and way of God. And there is. And we have to find it. Because if we can't find it, how can we lead people to God's kingdom when we're caught up in the same games and drama set forth out there in the world? For a title, we'll call this one, To Love in a World Set on hate. To love in a world set on hate. There's no doubt about it. No one can deny it. We live in a world that is set on hate, drunk on haterade and conflict. Here we are at what the world calls the most wonderful time of the year. Yeah. Yet, look at the faces on the people in the stores. Don't look too long. What you looking at? Might get, never mind. Don't look too long. But just notice the anger. Notice the fear. Notice the gloom. Notice the preoccupation. They're doing one thing and looks like their mind is completely somewhere else. Worried or wondering or just completely fearful about something else. This is a stressful time. They should call it the most stressful time of the year because in terms of those who live in stores, that's exactly what it is. They started off before it should start on what used to, what is, the one holiday that starts to begin to claim to pray and thank God for things. Oh no, you got to end that because Black Friday starts early, and you get there and you see people fighting over the last toy in the store. There's no point to that. This is a stressful time, made so. Our children are being tempted to use drugs, sell their bodies, have sex out of turn, grab guns and become violent, or do other things that are not right, that are not rooted in love, but rooted in hate. We don't even know what to call hate. We call it, why are you hating on me? And when you get to the root of what they're talking about, then this younger generation, they're not talking about hate, they're talking about jealousy. There is a difference. We've so mangled the language until we can use any word to use anything, but that comes from that old stuff from the 60s. Oh, he's a bad man, which really means he's a good man. No, it doesn't. But once you begin to see them change things to opposites and start to call it something other than what it really is, be aware that your mind is being manipulated. Once you come to that understanding, you see whose world you're dealing with. As a result, most of the youth have no respect for our parental authority. They have even less respect for the governmental authority. And this goes back way before the 60s. So if everyone, oh no, this all started in the 60s. Yeah, maybe 60 AD. If you don't believe it, look at what happened in 70 AD. I won't talk about it now. We'll get there. And the government, please. These world's governments have sold you out to the elites. They call it a democracy, but it's really, look it up the word if you don't know what it means, plutocracy. Because that's what it is. The rich basically run the country by their money. And this hasn't helped in people's minds one bit. With angry youth on the street, they're shooting each other over drug sales turf that they've not paid 1 penny in property tax for. But this is my corner. You'll tell them. They'll tell you, get off my corner. Get out of here. Oh, how much did you pay for this? I don't. Get out of here. This is my corner. This is my turf. And then they'll get out there and you'll see two guys arguing over some turf. Worst thing I saw years ago, I was sitting in my father-in-law's apartment and looked out, and there was a guy sitting out there on the corner. Another kid walked up to him, stuck a gun to his head. It looked like 4th of July. His head splattered all over that corner. I saw it developing and turned Rashida away and told her to go sit down, and she didn't know why. And the next thing we heard, And I watched it happen. Another life up in smoke for no reason. These little arguments that in the minds of mature adults are suddenly turned into major beefs in the minds of the immature. Thus, they end in gunplay or knife play. Often these clashes are intervened on by police officers who are overworked, stressed, pushed to their limit by 10-hour work days that were designed not to make the work easier for them, but to save on departmental budgets. And we'll find out the fallacy of that as we move through this. And one day they're on the streets, the next day they're doing duty rosters or sitting behind a desk. So just like any athlete, and believe it or not, anybody that tells you that having to do police work nowadays isn't like an athletic endeavor, I wonder how they can have so many of them out there overweight. It's like a workout. And you see them chasing somebody 200 pounds and huffing and puffing, and you wonder why there's so many shootings. It's quicker than catching up with them, I suppose. Doesn't make it right. Doesn't make it right. But as a result, these guys are out on the street overweight, sleep deprived, and some, I didn't say all, but I don't have a number for you, so just say some are poisoned by the chronic human disease of America. You know what that is, right? Bigotry, racism, if you will. We have seen the results of this toxic mix so many times over the last few years. Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, John Crawford III. And add to this the biased, purchased media by those same plutocrats. This purchased media making it appear that all of the shootings have been of black males, which sets up a whole other racial element in the cosmos that nobody wants to think about and contributes to the hate. The most publicized and most outrageous, yes, have been of black males. But that trend has changed over the last few years because some of these changes in these municipal police departments warranted it. And those orders, believe me, came from higher up. The trend toward police militarization brought on by the unrest caused by a public reaction to what's going on out there and fewer and lower paying jobs. All outsourced. The ones that are left here, you went to school to get a degree for it, but now all of a sudden all you can find is something that anybody on the street can get. Plus, they're bringing in all these people across the border with no degree, and half of them can't even speak English. And then you've got all of these people fighting for the same few jobs, which brings on what? More poverty. All of this and the forced inflation caused by the Federal Reserve, don't want to go there. All of this stress brings about a greater public awareness of the corruption at all levels of government. And of course, no matter what level of government it is, nowadays it's very popular to blame it all on the president. After all, he's different somehow. There's something about him that's different, so you got to blame him for everything now. These realities have brought on unrest among many citizens. As a result, many cities have given military contracts and other deals and set up lucrative markets where they can shop their products. You know, companies like Lockheed Martin, Black Hawk Industries, Glock. I had to bring it home for those who didn't know who Black Hawk and Lockheed Martin were. They're making big bucks by selling their equipment to municipalities flush with Department of Homeland Security grants brought on by Patriot Act 1 and Patriot Act 2, giving police and the NSA license to profile, and since they don't really know what these people look like, so what do they profile by? Ethnicity or religion. They're looking for terrorists under every bed within an already culturally insensitive profile. Mix this in with all of this over-the-top weaponry, and the logic is easy to see. You've heard it before in another context, but when you really think about it, it fits here. Give a man a hammer, and everything looks like a nail. Especially when love is nowhere in this toxic mix. Yet, we were warned of it all in the Bible. It simply was never made so much clearer than it is in today's news. If you read the news, I generally don't, because I believe it's purchased, and they only tell us what they want us to know. I want to know more than that, so I find other searches. It's almost an all-day thing, and I don't do it every day because it'll kill you. It takes all day to pull in newspapers from all over the world. And what I noticed that's really interesting is that the most interesting and the most complete news comes from other countries than the United States. You want to know something, you go to Le Mans, you go to German papers, RT from Russia, anything other than NBC, ABC, CBS, MSNBC, CNN, or FAUX. Oh, never mind. But you understand what I'm saying. You have to get it from different places in order to find out what's really going on. Yet, the most up-to-date periodical you can read is right here. Right here. Because they were telling you way back, 6,000 years ago, what was going to happen next year. We just don't always see it that way. We don't always see it that way. Because we haven't been preached much about prophecy. I got a reason for it. A lot of people just say, well, we were wrong so many times. You were wrong because you weren't locked in. You were wrong because you had your own agenda. You were wrong because you were trying to make some people be Israel that were not necessarily Israel, according to God. But we won't go there either. But we were preached, plenty of world politics. As a result, we don't see these hallmarks as clearly as we should. We see something entirely different, but we see it clearly. You got to give them that. You see, the roles that the world would like us to play are already in play through the things that we were preached. And others are getting preached a whole other version that we don't know anything about. And many of them, and unfortunately now, an increasing number of us will gladly listen to this. Why? Because we've reached a point where we trust the world far more than we trust the Word. But notice the words of Yeshua. There are great pearls of wisdom here that we have missed. You see, in coming out of the temple, the disciples with some pride looked around and said, look at all of this. This is beautiful. It's impressive. Look at it, Yeshua. Look at it. Look at it, Rabbi. Mark, the 13th chapter, the first verse. Mark, the 13th chapter, the first verse. In coming out of the temple, they, with some pride and probably some chiding, because you believe me, okay, they were all called out as disciples, but they came out of a Hebrew circumstance where, because of the amount of political pressure they had, his disciples were just as beat down and cowed to the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the scribes, and the high priest as everyone else was. So they wanted to, well, wait a minute, now you saying this stuff and they're saying something different. Now, look at all of this stuff here. Look at this beautiful temple. You're going to tell me that these people who inhabit this and who tell us what to do are wrong? Verse 1. And as he went out of the temple, one of his disciples said unto him, Master, see what manner of stones and what buildings are here? Speaking of the temple, which was torn down in 70 AD by Titus of Rome. An event which was actually prophesied in Micah, the 3rd chapter, the 12th verse, and the reason why was given here in Micah, the 3rd chapter, the 12th verse. So let's hold your fingers here and go to Micah, the 3rd chapter, the 12th verse. We're trying to get some understanding here today as to what causes temples to fall and governments to fail. Maybe we missed something here. Micah, the 3rd chapter, the 9th verse, and note the words of Micah, the Moreshite prophet, to the leaders of Israel. Micah, the 3rd chapter, the 9th verse, where it says, Hear this, I pray you, you heads of the house of Jacob, and princes of the house of Israel, that abhor judgment. What? And pervert all equity. They build up Zion with blood. You don't hear too much about it, but the same thing is going on now against the Palestinians right there in Israel as we speak. So not much has changed. They build up Zion with blood and Jerusalem with iniquity. Build a wall between one set of people and the other one and say, if you come across to the other side, we will shoot you. Same thing was going on then. Verse 11. The heads thereof judge for reward. What? Oh, we'll make a decision. We'll make the other decision if you pay us under the table. And these were the judges that were put there by, yes, it wasn't by God, but it was by the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the scribes, so forth. So they say, hey, we'll make this decision for you. You give us money, judge for reward. And the priests thereof teach for hire. Hey, you want to know, you want to believe this? We'll tell you that. Give me a little money. Give me a little something. And get this. The Bible says all through it about divination and witchcraft and all of that. What else was going on there? Finish 11. And the prophets thereof divine for money. Practice witchcraft or divination. That's what divining is. Yet will they lean upon Yahweh and say, is not Yahweh among us? None evil can come upon us. Therefore shall Zion for your sake be living there forever, and will be fine. Everything will be beautiful. It'll be peaceful. Let's go back and read that again. I must have closed my eyes and something came in there. I don't know. But let's go. It says, is not Yahweh among us? Not evil can come upon us. Verse 12. Therefore shall Zion for your sake be plowed as a field, and Jerusalem shall become heaps, and the mountain of the house as the high places, or the sacrificial groves of the forest. The high places were where the Hebrews went to sacrifice to their pagan idols, sinning against Yahweh. Now let's go to Mark, Go back to Mark, the 13th chapter, go back to the 2nd verse, where he told about this. He didn't tell why, but we know why. And Yeshua answered and said unto them, you see these great buildings? He admitted they were great. There shall not be left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives over against the temple, Peter and John, James and John and Andrew asked him privately, tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign when all these things shall be fulfilled? Because they were looking around and saying, hey, this stone looks strong to us. Doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon. Tell us something. What's going to happen here? Verse 5, and Yeshua answering them began to say, take heed lest any man deceive you. For many shall come in my name saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. Just as now, many say that Jesus is the Christ, but neglect to teach what he taught. They teach lies. They teach falsehood, making people believe that all is done and they need do nothing but speak some words. What they call it, the sinner's prayer. Something like that. And they believe that all you've got to do is say these little words and just in time you'll be a believer and you'll go ushered off into heaven, and when the rapture comes, you'll be whisked off to be heaven and you'll be in heaven forever. And you don't have to learn any of this prophecy stuff because it doesn't apply to us. We won't be here. So as a consequence, most never bother to learn prophecy or feel that they need to learn much about it because we're not going to be here. Hate to tell you this, but guess what? We're going to be here. At least up to the beginning. You're certainly going to be through the first 3.5 years of it. And the first 3.5 years are going to be relatively easy because the Antichrist is going to say, do whatever you want to do. He's going to push an ecumenical thing that says, whatever you want to do, do it. And it's going to make a lot of people feel like they were right. And you see, you Sabbath keepers, see, we were all okay. We were all right. And some of us, were you ever in one of those churches where they felt like it was their personal purview and their purpose in life to make other people angry at them because they thought that made them properly more in God's graces? I went through that. Everybody goes through it, but it's just like a trial. You're going through it. You don't stop there. As you learn better, you do better. And you learn more about true prophecy. Mark, the 13th chapter, the 7th verse. Continue right there. And this is going to get interesting, but it's not going to be a whole lot of prophetic talk. I'm going to deal with the heart, not the head. And when you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, be you not troubled, for such things must needs be. But the end shall not be yet. We have missed this last part in verse 8 for so many years prophetically because we've become so caught up in it that we refuse to release the sin associated with the problem. You see, wars are all around us. U.S. policy, foreign policy anyway, we won't get into domestic policy yet because there doesn't seem to be any. But foreign policy has caused many of these wars and much of this conflict. But notice the second part of the prophecy and the true Greek meanings of these words. Verse 8, for nation shall rise against nation. We thought, oh, this is just more wars. What? Stop. Wait. What you have to do, and this is a study technique that I've come to over the years. I was taught by a man named R.Allan. I like to drop names every once in a while. God rest him. He says sometimes when you see something and you see it more than once in the Bible, if it says something twice, take a second look. There may be some importance there that you missed. If you don't see it when you read it, go back and find out what the original words meant in the original language. For nation shall rise against nation. This particular case, that is the Greek word G1481, a neutral noun meaning ethnos. A multitude, a people, a tribe, or we don't like that word because it's fallacious, race. I don't like that word race. Let me tell you why. They say that, oh, there's different races of people. No. Go back and read a science book. There's one race. It's called Homo sapiens. I didn't say that. Homo sapiens. One race. So whenever you hear somebody talking about, oh no, we can't let them get married because she's of a different race. Okay. He's a Homo sapien, right? What is she? Is she equine? Is she equine? Is she horse? Is she canis? Is she a dog? These are the species I know of. Is she bovine? Is she a cow? So she's Homo sapien. He's Homo sapien. Therefore, they're both of the same species, right? So they're of the same race, right? Oh, no, she's a different race. No, she's not. She's of a different culture. If you got a problem with the culture, deal with the cultural issue and find some common ground. She's not of a different race. She's of a different culture. Now, if you got a problem with that, maybe you need to go talk to God. Because he only made one. But we've built a whole world around this lie. Therefore, we have to deal with this. Nation shall rise against nation, or ethnos or ethnicity will rise against ethnicity. Look at what happens when the media says they're all black and black people are all ready to kill white people, and white people are over here saying, hey, wait a minute. Well, this one got shot and they got shot. The media said nothing, but the media must be controlled by the black president. Wake up. Wake up, people. We are being divided unnecessarily. Unnecessarily. And don't be so stupid as to think you won't fall for it. The seeds of this hate were built in your childhood. Remember when you were a child, you all played on the playground together. I used to work and used to live in a neighborhood where it was all kinds of people there. When we were 3 and 4 years old, we didn't care. But when you start getting to be 7 or 8, where all of a sudden gestation might become an issue. Oh, you can't play with them anymore. You got to get away from them there. But what's wrong with him, Mom? He's fun. Yeah, but you choose your own. Yeah. We all had one. Don't kid yourself. But this is where it all comes from. That first one, oh no, it was nation against nation. No, it was ethnos against ethnos. Race against race, according to this flawed world. And kingdom against kingdom. Now, let's get interesting. What is kingdom and kingdom? Greek, G932. Female or feminine noun. Basilia, a people in a territory under kingly rule. A kingdom, a royal dominion. Countries or kingdoms fighting against each other. Now, first one was talking about people fighting against each other. You already got that going on. And it can only get worse if we don't figure it out and cut it down. countries or kingdoms fighting against each other. As I've shown you, that's two completely different things. Ethnos versus ethnos can go on forever, and no one cares because they think it's the right thing to do, because we can't be like them. Choose your own them. We all were taught one. We came here to get that distaught, is that a word? Untaught, removed, if you will, from where we're at. Kind of like, what was that one I did a few years ago? Talking about education, miseducation, diseducation, something. I don't remember it. It's fun sometimes making up words from two words that really do exist and messing minds up with it. It's fun. But at the same time, you have to get along with it and deal with the honesty of where you're coming from when you do this. You don't do it out of anger. You don't do it out of your own little feelings of bigotry along there. You can't come to something like this unless you come to it biblically and remove yourself from the nonsense. But at the same time, removing yourself from the nonsense doesn't mean you don't see clearly the problem within the improper paradigm. Yes, there is bigotry in this country of one culture against another. You can't not see that. But you work to try to make it better. That's what you do. The beginning of sorrows, as it said. What it say? And there shall be earthquakes in diverse places. That's already started. And there shall be famines and troubles. That's already started. These things are the beginning of sorrows. Cut it right there. Stop it right there. The beginning of sorrows. What will the end be like? You don't even want to know about that yet. This is where we sit prophetically right now in 2014. Now, in the course of doing this, I contemplated listing the 162 armed conflicts and active revolutions going on in the world right now at this moment, but decided not to because I've only got so much time. That would take too long. Well, anyway, so much for peace on earth, huh? Goodwill toward men. There are, as of this morning, and that could have changed, only 11 countries in the world in which there are no armed conflicts going on currently. Only 11. The first one is obvious and easy. You ought to know who it is. Switzerland. Should have known who that was. Japan. Qatar. Middle East, in case we didn't know. Mauritius. Uruguay. Chile. Botswana. Probably the only country in Africa that's not at war. Costa Rica. Can't have any war down there. That's where all your money is. Oops, I shouldn't have said that, even though it's true. How many of you got bosses that got property and got numbered accounts in Costa Rica? Oh, I'm sorry. Did I bust somebody out? Oh, never mind. Vietnam, Panama, and 11, Brazil. Now, with the protests over the World Cup so vividly in my memory, Brazil might find itself off that list very soon. It might be happening right now if anybody's having any kind of a discussion about the World Cup. Anybody that saw what went on in Brazil, that's not a joke to you, because you know it could happen. They are serious about their soccer down there. Almost as serious as Germany, but we won't go there. But as we believers, as we're here as believers, we need to begin to learn that all the X's and O's of prophecy are not yet hardwired. Therefore, don't lock yourself in too far with anybody's vision of what's going to happen, because it could all change. How many of us knew that this prophecy of unrest in the days of Yeshua, as well as unrest leading up to the start of the time of tribulation, had anything to do with ethnos before today? We knew it in our minds, but we thought, oh, that's not prophetic. Oh, but it is. God knew when we didn't want to admit it. In other words, the major details can change. And others we have not fully understood as yet will change. That's why I never get too detailed in the unclear parts of prophecy. I don't want to lead anyone astray. I'm more interested, however, right now in making sure that we understand that it is more important that our attitudes are right about what Christ expects of his people. We went through this morning, and I didn't realize you were going to, but it is what it is. Let's go to Luke, the 18th chapter, the first verse. You see, Yeshua teaches a parable and then asks a very valid question. It's valid because on its answer hangs the key to salvation for all who seek him in his way, especially we believers. Luke, the 18th chapter, the first verse, where it says, "And he also spoke a parable to them to teach it is always right to pray and not to faint." Saying, a certain judge was in a certain city, not fearing God nor respecting man. Wow, how are you judging doing that? But we'll go on. And a widow was in that city, and she came to him saying, "Avenge me of my adversary." And he would not do so for a time. But afterward, he said within himself, "Though I do not fear God nor regard man, yet because this widow troubles me, I will avenge her, that she not wear me down in the end." In other words, she ain't gonna leave me alone anyway, so let me give it to her and get out of my face. And the Lord said, "Hear what the unjust judge says. And shall not God avenge his own elect who cry day and night to him?" What do you learn from that? When you have a problem, never stop praying about it. Didn't we hear that before? P-U-S-H. And shall not God, again, avenge his own elect who cry day and night to him? In other words, if you're not willing to cry and pray and continue to bug him, how can you expect to get anything? Oh, I'm going to pray once, and if he don't, yeah, you be arrogant if you want to. Oh, he failed. Oh, shut up. Though he has been long suffering over them, I say to you that he will avenge them speedily. Yet, salient question, don't miss this. Yet when the Son of Man comes, shall he find faith on the earth? Will he find faith on the earth? Men and women who have studied his word know what it says, and no matter what comes their way, they remain believing that he will return and end this madness somehow, if they really believe. And they believe that he will end this madness and redeem his saints. Take controls of the world out of men who control it and render our lives a drudgery and misery by their errant control. You see, this was why he asked the question. Yeshua saw what the Pharisees were doing. They were planning to kill him in order to gain further control over these people, and while allegedly sitting in Moses' seat. There's a whole other sermon I'll deal with that Moses' seat fully, or probably closer to the time it's relevant, maybe probably just before Passover or somewhere through there. That one is interesting. And it relieves us of that whole idea that we have to follow the Israeli government no matter what. Because guess what? They're as wrong as the Pharisees were. You see, God knew what was going on. He knew what all of this oppression was doing to his people in Jerusalem, and he knew it would for a time be far worse once he was gone. Even up to his prophecy of the raising of that temple and the massacre of the Hebrews by Titus in 70 AD, he knew eventually it would happen. Those people rest in their graves waiting for his return. But what of us? What about us? Do we continue in hope for his return? Or have the times become so dismal that we wait for a political solution? Or as in the days of Yeshua, we want a physical revolution. That what you want? Someone who will take down this government and usher in one of our choosing. Well, hey, there's a whole lot of folk want that. You got some black groups that want it. You got Aryan nation groups that want it. And believe me, some of them are arming to do it. They're waiting for the whole thing to fall down. Once these people don't have any money for their military, we can take over. You hear it all the time if you go out on, like, say, stormfront.org. Yeah, I do it just to see what they're talking about. Just to see what they're talking about. If you're going to talk about everybody, you got to know a little bit about everything. So you look at some stuff that maybe your eyes might roll over when you look at it, but you look at it anyway. And you take it in and apply it to this, and somehow you put it out there in a way that doesn't make you feel, make you all feel the way I felt when I read that garbage. But it is what it is. We're all looking for someone to take down this government and usher in one of our choosing. I wouldn't wait for that. Because you see, over the last 3,000 years, we have behind us the history of those who've done it before, starting with Nimrod's Babylon with its walled cities, where we'll protect you if you pay us. We'll protect you if you do this. If you don't, we're going to kill you. We could go on up to Ramses, Egypt, with its crushing slavery among amazing technology for their time. God took them down with nature. Rain, gnats, blood in the water. Rain that came down as rain as little as hail and hit the ground and turned into little fireballs. In case you missed that. That's an amazing story when you go back through Exodus and read that in its entirety. But they thought they had the greatest government in history. Fail. Then there was the Greece of Alexander the Great, who got to a point and looked on the hill and said he cried because there was nothing else to conquer. Messed up everything else. Now what else you got to mess up? I got nothing else to mess up. Oh, I'm sure that's not what he said, but that's what it was. And then you get to the Caesars of Rome, who were the bane of ancient Israel. Through all of these, there's a thread of God's truth to be found, yet in this age, a drought is emerging. Oh, there's plenty of religion to be found. But like slow boiling water, it's easing the world into a comfortable false religion. The religion of Antichrist is already in place. Many already follow it unknowingly. It will be religious at the start. Appear loving and friendly. Just as Yeshua desires unity among his followers, even so Antichrist has put in place a counterfeit church based on what? False unity. An ecumenical, ecclesiastical federation of religions, churches, and denominations, what? Reverse those letters and you probably got the right word. demonizations. Yeah, denomination, demonization. What's the difference? That omit the name of Jesus or Yeshua and deny the reality of a necessity for full immersion baptism. I watched Indian baptism. I'm not talking about Indians, I'm just talking about who they were. He did a baptism. The girl came out with a flower, went down in the water, and she started floating on the top of the water. He made some prayers and did some things that made sense and did some things that didn't. Dunked her head in, brought her back up, and while she floated there, he said some kind of something over her. And everybody got on and said, "Oh, that was so beautiful. Oh, it was so beautiful. Did you? Oh, I want to be baptized like that." She never went under the water. When she came out of the water, they never laid hands on her to get the Holy Spirit. But everybody, and this was a Sabbath-keeping group, "Oh, it was so beautiful. I want to be baptized like that." Do you really? But we're so bought into beauty. We're so bought into looks. We're so bought into things. "Oh, that was so beautiful. We got to do it like that." No. No. Full immersion water baptism is eschewed now in the slickest ways. They deny the reality of death to those who sin because they say that sin is done away, because the law is done away. No, it's not. No, it's not. And they teach that all of us, no matter what we've done, will live forever. Denying the truths of the Bible, denying the truths of prophecy, and denying the martyrdom of Christ and his resurrection. And the blood, and especially this time of year, and it's a fascinating dichotomy that while we talk about putting the Christ back in Christmas, we've got some of the same people sitting in their churches denying the virgin birth. Which is fascinating considering some of the extremes some people have gone through to keep Christ in Christmas. And some not realizing that he was never really there. But they smile and agree no matter what it is so that they can stay in this false state of unity. And as much as I hate to say it, well, no, I don't. It's the truth. We who have tested the truth have no use for this kind of faith. Okay, now I said it. Many are turning back to the world, unable to find true believers. And their frustration and anger is palpable. Even many in the churches of God are now losing faith and reaching out for other things because, well, wow, nothing has happened yet. Give yourself a little time. Give God more. We see our brethren losing jobs, watching family members falter and fall ill or find themselves in danger. Others die, and faith is weakened. Others find worldly causes hoping for a human solution, so many agree with the national police protest. I don't have a problem with it, because it is evil what's going on. And I believe it is going according to somebody's plan. No doubt about that. But if these protests become more violent, and they could, the numbers are getting bigger every day, we could play right into the hands of those who want to put this country under martial law. The dollar is about to collapse. You heard? Let's keep watching it. Be careful with your bank. How many of you have pulled a large sum of money out of your bank over the last few weeks? Try it. You got to fill out all kinds of forms. You got to tell them why you're getting it. It's your money. But you know why they're doing that? Because where it used to be, banks had to hold in reserve at least the base amount of the total amount of money that was in your accounts. They don't do that anymore. They all They loan it out now as soon as it comes in. There is no reserve. So when you come to get your money, in a lot of cases, it's just barely there. It's just barely there. Be aware of this. Watch your money for the next few months or so. But you see, the collapse is coming. These are the little things that let you know about it, but do you think you're going to hear that on the news? No. Why? Because most of the people that own them are banks and corporations that don't want you to know this. But the dollar, as I said, is about to collapse, and the Department of Homeland Security is supposed to protect us? No. Protect the banks. Because when they find out why it collapsed, people are going to hit the streets. So what have they done? You've probably heard about this. Well, maybe you have, maybe you haven't. They've bought over, I think, 750 million rounds of ammunition. Most of it hollow points. Anybody know what a hollow point bullet is? A hollow point bullet, when it hits bone, it shatters. When it shatters into the body, it rips everything there. It's like throwing a grenade into the body. Almost guarantees you cannot be repaired. Why would a government buy this kind of bullets with the possibility of having to turn it on their own people? Even the police are not allowed to use hollow point bullets. It's illegal for them. You can lose your job. That's deep. You can lose your job faster for using a hollow point bullet than shooting somebody in the head that doesn't have a gun. This is a world set on hate. Deal with it. Satan is in control of the minds and hearts of the people. Surely we're headed toward a rough time. But this is the time to prepare for the coming storm, spiritually. A time to keep and learn the words of this book and warn those who will listen of what's in it. What does that mean? How can you teach if you don't know? Learn it, understand it, internalize it, make it real. To the point where, did anybody see the movie, The Book of Eli? Anybody want to see it? Raise your hands. Oh, well, I was going to give it away. But I won't do it. I'll just say this for those who haven't seen it and those who have. Learn the book as well as Eli did. That's all I can tell you. That way, you'll more deeply understand why life is the way it is. Because you see, Peter laid it all out for us. In 1 Peter, the first chapter, the 3rd verse. This is what we need to understand. Not specifically who the Antichrist is. When he comes on the scene, if we know this book, we know who he is anyway. We'll know exactly who he is. In verse 1, he says, "Blessed be the God and Father of our Master Yeshua Messiah, who, according to his great mercy, has regenerated us again to a living hope through the resurrection of Yeshua Messiah from the dead, to an inheritance incorruptible and undefiled and unfading, reserved in heaven for you." Reserved, that means that you might have to wait. You know how you call in a reservation on a hotel, or for a hotel you have to wait till you get there to get it? But you know it's there, right? You believe it's there, so you're willing to wait. Do we have a faith that that is there? Why not wait? 5, by the power of God, having been kept through faith to a salvation ready to be revealed in the last days, or the last time, in which you greatly rejoice, yet a little while, if need be, grieving in manifold temptations. In other words, you got to deal with what's going on down here. You got to go through it to get to it. so that the trials of your faith, being much more precious than that of gold that perishes, but being proven through fire, might be found to praise and honor and glory at the revelation of Yeshua Messiah, whom having not seen, you love. That's what blows most people's minds. We willing to do all this, and we don't even see him. We don't even hear him. Hey, how do you know he's there? How do you know he's there? And you're going to do all this? Are you crazy? What's wrong with you? I believe. That's what faith is. The substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Why is that weird to you? Having not seen, you love. In whom not yet seeing, but believing in him, you exult with unspeakable joy, and having been glorified, obtaining the end of your faith, the salvation of your souls, and with which salvation the prophets sought out and searched out, prophesying concerning the grace for you, searching for what manner of time the Spirit of Christ made clear within them, testifying beforehand of the sufferings of Christ and the glories that should follow. To them it was revealed that not to themselves, but to us, they ministered the things which are now reported to you by those who have preached the gospel to you in the Holy Spirit sent from heaven. In other words, those things happened to them in order to they could be recorded in this book in order to tell you that you might believe. Which things the angels desire to look into, and a lot of people preach a whole lot of nonsense about that, but all that is saying is they're looking at it and they want to see, wow. Angels want to look more deeply into this because they want to see who these new beings are, whom they may soon be the messengers of also. Hadn't thought about that, had you? Note the reverent attitude of angels who recognize their place and are satisfied with their station, as opposed to those who have been told, he's keeping something from you, let's go against him. They call them demons now, and they will soon not be. Verse 13. Therefore, girding up the loins of your mind, being sober, perfectly hope for the grace being brought to you at the revelation of Yeshua Messiah. As obedient children, not fashioning yourselves according to the former lusts in your ignorance, but according to the Holy One who has called you, also become holy in all conduct, because it is written, be holy as I am holy. And if you call on the Father, who without respect of persons judges according to the work of one, pass the time of your earthly residence in fear, knowing that you were not redeemed with corruptible things, silver or gold, from your vain manner of life handed down from your fathers, but with the precious blood of Yeshua, as of a lamb without blemish and without spot. Indeed, having been foreknown before the foundation of the world. If this plan has been in place since before the world, why can't we wait a little longer to see it? You're going to die anyway. Why not die with a good record if you're going to die? And if you're going to still be alive, you're going to go through enough to have earned it anyway. Believe me. Indeed, having been foreknown before the foundation of the world, but revealed in the last times for you, me. 21. Those believing in God through him, who he raised him from the dead and gave him glory, so that your faith and hope might be in God. Purifying your souls in the obedience of the truth through the spirit of to unfeigned love. What's that? No faking, no lying, real love. If you say you love, not saying something just to get something out of somebody or to trick them. unfeigned love of the brothers. Love one another fervently out of a pure heart, having been born again, not of corruptible seed, but of incorruptible, through the living word of God, and abiding forever. For all grass, all flesh is as grass, and all the glory of men as the flower of the grass. And what happens to the grass in the fall? See ya. And if it's got the good seed, it comes back in the spring. Fascinating how the cycles of God so easily and beautifully cycle within cycles of nature, that it begins, life begins in the spring. The year begins in the spring. That's why we don't believe that the year ends on December 31st. It actually begins in April. So why celebrate a year end that's not year? Oh, it's fine to recognize it. But why jump out party and get drunk? And that's where the sin is, and the stuff you do there. But we won't go there. For all flesh is grass, and all the glory of men as the flower of the grass. The grass withers, and its flower falls out. But the word of the Lord endures forever. And this is the word preached as gospel to you. And remaining faithful to this word will stay us all through the rough times soon to come. Many of us are already feeling the sting of those times already, in some small way, some in bigger ways. Many haven't gone through it yet, but give it time. It's coming. But may we all remain together in the love of God through Christ our Messiah. For only through obedience to God, love for one another, and a willingness to give our lives as living sacrifices to Yeshua will we make it into his eternal kingdom. May we all remain strong enough to make it into his eternal kingdom. God bless you all.